Welcome back, my friends. For those who stayed till the very end of the last video, I had mentioned I might not be making too many more videos this season because I didn't want to just repeat the same build over and over again, and I felt the season was very static and wouldn't put out a video unless something kind of new happened. Well, I decided to try something with this latest patch, and something new happened. So I wanted to see how LaserCorp was performing with the changes that they made. And if you don't know, what they did is essentially they added another tier of LaserCorp. It used to go 3, 6, 9. Now it goes 3, 5, 7, 9. So you can get a pretty decent benefit by getting to 7, and you can get to 7 without having to create 2 emblems. So I decided to play Can We Force It with LaserCorp. Let's see how it turned out. My first set of augments were a little uninspiring. I decided to just go with Sunfire board so that I could put some anti-heal out there and reduce the health of the opposing team. Now, I haven't really messed with LaserCorp since very early in the season because I didn't find it particularly strong once it came out. And so I'm going to be experimenting throughout these 5 games with different carries and different ways of doing it. This one I decided to try Senna, but I also learned that a lot of people are now using LaserCorp. It's now time for our second augment, and we get offered a hero augment, which we have the opportunity to roll 4 times. However, since there is a LaserCorp augment offered with the Yasuo and a 60% Omnivamp, I decide to just go with that and use that one because there's no guarantee it's going to be something that I want. Notice I've also brought in Vayne. I brought in Vayne for 2 reasons. It's Recon for Ashe and then also Duelist for Yasuo. So I feel Vayne is going to be an important part of any LaserCorp build. And unless you get blessed with a lot of spatulas or crests, you are not getting to 9 LaserCorp. So there is going to be 2 spots on your team open to additional champions. Vayne is going to be one of them for me, and then in this case, I chose to go with Cho as a frontliner. It's time for the final augment of Game 1, and none of these are really good, so we're going to go ahead and roll them. This left me a couple of options. I could go with the Duelist crest, get rid of Cho'Gath, bring in an additional Duelist so I get up to 4, but I decided instead to go with Exiles because I already had the 2-star Cho'Gath and he was working really well in the front line. So I didn't necessarily want to get rid of that, and I wasn't going to turn Cho'Gath into a Duelist. So I felt it better to get the additional shield and then see how that will carry me. And I think no one was more surprised than me that I actually went into the top 4 and then ended up in 2nd place. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to show you the complete ending because the software kind of glitched just at that point, but I end up losing this fight. Everyone goes out, but I go out at 0, and the person wins with 2, and then the other person falls below. And I want to show you the opening carousel from Game 2, and this theme is going to play throughout. Notice everyone seems to be gathering around Ashe with the needlessly large rod. I thought I had it and just ended up having to grab anything. This continues throughout this entire 5-game run where I'm pretty much not able to get the champion I want because everyone's jumping on the LaserCorp champions. And while for this particular match it could have been the rod, over and over again I saw people gathering around Ashe, so people are trying to start off this way. But you'll see how this all turns out. For this first augment, I decide to go ahead and grab featherweights. The reason is Ashe, Renekton, Yasuo, they're all 1 and 2 cost champions, and having them attack faster will be very useful. Not so much Renekton, but definitely Ashe and Yasuo attacking faster will be good. And you can see that little extra burst of speed does help us early. It's time for the second augment, and again I am tempted with the Duelist crest because that could allow me to go to 4 Duelists throughout the entire thing, but instead opt for a little bit of healing, which is something that I feel that the LaserCorp build is lacking somewhat. In this case, I got some early Recons, so I've added in Recons, so I have the 3 laser, 3 Recons at this point. In this game, I got a spatula during the NPC round. I was originally going to put a Giant Slayer on Ashe, but then realized I could make a LaserCorp emblem. And so by combining the spatula with the sword, I can make the LaserCorp and put that on Vayne, which will now have a Duelist LaserCorp along with Yasuo on the team, who's also a Recon. And I feel that Recon could mix in very well with Laser Corp if it's done right. And you can see here, getting the constant 100% crit chance is allowing them to just overwhelm the teams very quickly. The one problem with having the 4 Recons is you're giving up a lot of your frontline for it, for the ability for them to dash away. But if you happen to get a Recon heart, then you can take one of the Recons out, still maintain your 4, and work more on your frontline. We went ahead and got rid of Ezreal, brought a Rammus into the front line so that he could tank things up, as we're looking really for Sejuani, but you can see that one change did allow us to have the additional power and time to finish off a team. With Vayne as an additional Laser Corp and having a Recon heart, it has allowed us to get to the 7-4 kind of magic combo a little early, and as a result has carried us into the top 4. This particular match, amusingly enough, ended up becoming LaserCorp versus LaserCorp. They were using Prankster and Hacker along with their build, while I was going full Recon. I didn't necessarily think I was going to win this one, as their team just had been performing really well. You can see they're on fire and had not lost in a while. But this is game 2, so I'm not exactly upset if I get another second place. It would be a pretty surprising start for a build I had not worked much with before. And yeah, second game, second place. Third game, I'm again tempted by Duelist Heart, but decide to go with Thrill of the Hunt. I know with the Duelist Heart I can get to the 4 Duelists, but the healing to me is just more important in this build. Now this game started off really frustrating. As you can see, I still don't have the 3 Laser Corp by 5-1. I'm using Vel'Koz, I brought in an Ezreal to take Recon and a second Ashe just to fill out the team while I'm trying to put something together. The second set of augments, they just simply don't work, so I go ahead and re-roll them and then decide to go with Pandora's Bench. I'm very close to a gold 3-star Ashe, so I might be able to use that to get there, and also I need to fill out and find my Laser Corp. Now I will in a moment roll and find the Yasuo so I can at least get up to 3 and stop putting all the threats in to hold up the team, but I need a lot of help for this to ultimately work. Now, not only was this game being a little frustrating with the champions, but also, as you can see, the item choices I'm getting are not what I'm looking for. I've got a ton of rods, a bunch of tiers, I've got the makings of a gargoyle stone plate, and nothing here that's really going to fill anything in. I'm looking for swords, I'm looking for bows, I'm looking for ways to make these champions attack stronger, and it just isn't happening. I go ahead and put the Dragon's Claw on Cho because he already has magic resist, and this will just make it stronger so he can be a real force in the front line. Now, despite having some champion and item struggles, I've managed to get to first place in the health rankings at this point. Then I get the hero augment, and yeah, I'm gonna grab Shatter even though I have rolls. I needed a Sejuani anyway, and having her with more power is even better. I finally get a bow, and I can go ahead and make a Rage Blade on Vayne. Even though I don't have the 2-star Vayne yet with Pandora's Bench, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be able to get it. Now I want to explain my reasoning for the insanity you're about to see, and it's not necessarily insanity, it's just not what's usually done. I decide to go ahead and grab the static ship. The reason is I was thinking that since the Laser Corp do magic damage, it wouldn't be a bad idea to shred the magic resist of the opposing team. So I go ahead and put that on Vayne, since Vayne is going to be attacking the fastest of anyone, because Duelist, Rage Blade, etc., Vayne's going to be getting in a lot of attacks, proccing a lot of static shiv, and pretty much shredding all the magic resist on the opposing team. That in turn will allow our little drones to do more damage because the magic resist will be less, so they'll be resisting less of the damage that the drones are doing, and they're happening very often throughout the match. You can see the strategy appears to be working. It works well enough that once more I find myself in the top 2 battling for first place, and in this case against a 7 Anima Squad Prankster team. So yeah, I'm against Animaniacs, although not fully, because they only have 2 of the 3 Pranksters, so they're not getting the
full and complete prankster buff, which I think is really necessary for the Animaniacs build, but they do have an incredibly strong Misfortune in the corner, as you can see with the blue buff Spear of Sojin and Rabadon's Death Cap. But our team is actually really strong, and Mordekaiser is able to slam down, do a ton of damage. I had put an additional static shiv on Ashe, and you can see it was enough to carry on, finish, and actually end up with a first place. So game 3 now, first place. And I wonder somewhat if I'm onto something in putting a static shiv on your backline champions in this build. So I went ahead and made a static shiv on Ashe early in this one. One big problem I ran into, the first augments are hero augments, and none of them are giving me LaserCorp or LaserCorp friendly champions that I can use. Nothing. All 4 rolls. I end up and just go with Armored Dillo, because at least it'll give me somewhat of a tanky frontline. Now normally I would build this into a threat build, but I'm not doing that. I'm forcing LaserCorp, so I'm stuck with that. And I'm going to have a Rammus on the team that will be tanky, but is going to take up a slot that I might have otherwise used for other things. Despite not having a hero augment that we really wanted, the build is holding up well. We've only lost once going into 5-1 in time for the second set of augments. I was also curious because I rolled through all of my augments. Yes, it does save an additional roll for you later on if you roll through all of your hero augments. Nothing here is really great. I decide to go ahead and go with scoped weapons because that will allow my backline to at least attack a little bit faster than they otherwise would, but it's not really a primary thing for this build. I can move Yasuo back 1 and that will give him some attack power. That will also help with Zed later on because he will then have additional attack range. Now overall, the game had been tempting me with Duelist emblems, Duelist hearts, Duelist crests so often, I decided to go ahead and do it here. Grab the spatula and I can turn Ashe into a Duelist. This will increase her attack speed, and since she's holding the static shiv, that means it'll proc more often, damage more people, and of course shred more magic resist, allowing for our drones to be able to do their full damage. And the strategy appears to be working. With this, I'll be able to get to the 4 Duelists because I have Yasuo in. Ashe is now a Duelist. I'm going to be bringing in Vayne, who is also a Duelist in Recon, and then Zed to make another LaserCorp, and that will give me the 4 Duelists and ultimately the 7 LaserCorp along with Mordekaiser. As we reach the final augment, I wonder what might have been had I gone threat from the beginning, because then I get threat level maximum. But yeah, I didn't because I'm forcing something here. So I decide to go ahead and grab the phony frontline so that I can put the target dummies out front and just hold things up a little bit longer. But I really feel like I could have gone threat and just made this an easy win. And once again, I end up in the top 2, but it's against a team running the same augment that I had, only they were able to go threat with it because they weren't stuck forcing builds. They also ended up with the 550 Thrill of the Hunt, so they had a huge advantage, and so this one ends up going second place. But overall, I have to say I'm pretty shocked because so far all of these matches have been first or second place, and it's time for our final match. I grabbed a tier this time because I kind of like the strategy I've come up with in terms of the static shiv. I don't know if it's a really strong one, but it's worked. I saw the Recon heart here and immediately grabbed it because I like the idea of being able to get to the 4 Recons without having to have all 4 Recons. They're pretty strong as a group, and especially if you can put a good front line in front of them, they work really well. Now this particular match felt like it was going down in flames. It took me till 4-2 until I was able to assemble my actual full LaserCorp. I ended up putting a Spear of Sojin onto Kaisa to try to stem the bleeding, but it just wasn't helping. The second augment pops up and nothing really great, but I'm not a huge fan of rolling the silvers, so I just go ahead and take Exile because it will work. I can separate them, and it'll give them a little bit of a health shield, making the front line a little bit tankier. By the time we're ready for the final augment, I have slipped way down in the health, and I am not sure I'm going to be able to pull this out, but I get Spread Shot, which gives Vayne the ability to hit 2 additional targets at 75% damage. This is going to give me the opportunity to turn Vayne into a carry. Luckily, I have a magnetic remover, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the bow from this so that I can make a last whisper on Vayne, so those attacks are going to shred armor. Then I can go ahead, use the magnetic remover, get the Rage Blade onto Vayne, and then a Bloodthirster just for a little additional healing because we don't have much on the team. I went ahead and got Sejuani up to 2, and my goal is to maybe get Vayne up to 3 stars. Now, since we're at 4 Recon, every single one of those ults is going to crit, so Vayne is going to be doing a ton of true damage, as you can see from the damage charts. Now, this moment in this match is pretty monumental for me because it is the first time I have done a Can You Force It with 5 games and not once fallen outside of the top 4. I'm in the top 4. I've also just picked up the 2-star Mordekaiser and the gold 3-star Vayne with the help of the champion duplicator, of course. But I actually feel like I might be in a position to win, which would be absolutely insane because then no game in this entire set has been outside first or second place, despite the fact that it seems that LaserCorp are actually really competitive, as I met them in almost every single match, and a couple of times it came down, well, I think one time came down to those being the top 2. But as you can see, this team looks really hard to beat right now. And it quick came down to my team and a team running a Gadgetine build, and I really felt I had a strong chance, especially with Vayne up at 3 stars with those items. It's going to be very hard to take her down and make it stick, because remember, she's going to roll out of the way, do damage, and gain health back thanks to the Bloodthirster. I don't have any other healing on the team, but even with that Nunu kind of rolling through the backline and their Urgot just knocking things away, look how effective Vayne is at just finishing things off. It's down to just Vayne against their team. It doesn't matter. Vayne is going to win it, and Game 5 ends up in first place. And for the first time, well, I have a whole different way of looking at this, but we're going to go back to the same scoreboard, but it was pretty wacky. Unlike my other 2 Force builds, there was no specific way to build this other than just get as many LaserCorp as possible and then try to build the team around it. So it's not definitively one way to do it like with Animaniacs or Admin Heart, but Game 1, second place. Game 2, also second place. Game 3, we got to first place. Game 4 went back to second place, and then Game 5, first place, which is just insane. We didn't fall outside of first or second place. Now we get to figuring out the Force score, where we just add our positions, which is 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, divide all that by 5, and we get our Force score of 1.6. 1.6. That's insane. Is it sustainable? I doubt it. I doubt you're going to come in first or second place every single time you try LaserCorp. But something I did in these matches, as I mentioned before, that I didn't do in my other Force builds, is there was a lot more flexibility. Sometimes it ended up with LaserCorp Recon. Sometimes it ended up with LaserCorp Duelist. Since you have 2 flex champions to work with, there's a lot of ways you can go. You can even go LaserCorp Brawler if you want, or as you saw that other person who went LaserCorp Hacker and Prankster. So it can work a lot of different ways. Give it a try. I really wouldn't have suggested this before, but I tried it and this was the result. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, hope you have an absolutely awesome day.